Good morning, everybody. I hope that you're doing well, and that your family is well as we move forward with our class online. I'm sure you all remember that when we were in class, we would have a day where everybody, and it was usually the day when the topic proposal was due, where everybody would put their claim on the board, and we would spend the class period discussing each claim and whether or not it would work. So that's what we're going to do today. That's why I asked you to email me your claim. Unfortunately, only 6 of you did, and these are the 6 right here, and we'll go over each of them in turn. But before we start looking at the individual claims, I want to remind us of what are the criteria for an acceptable claim for Essay 3. Well, first of all, is the claim debatable? And what I mean by that is, can you think of other possible solutions that the claim doesn't name to the problem? If you can, if you're naming the only possible realistic solution to the problem, then it's probably not a debatable claim, and therefore wouldn't work for the essay. Second, does the claim name a specific solution and a specific problem? That's important, right? We shouldn't have 3 different solutions. We shouldn't have a vague solution. We shouldn't have 2 different problems, right? We should have one solution to one problem that are clearly defined. And finally, is the solution practical or reasonable? And so, for example, if the problem that we were trying to address was theft, and we said, well, we should cut off the hand of anybody who's caught stealing something. It's like, is that a realistic solution? Yeah, well, I mean, in a sense, it would decrease the theft for sure, right? But we probably couldn't do it for a number of reasons, realistically. And so, we wouldn't want to accept that claim because it's just not realistic. And as we go through these, we also want to talk about whether they are policy proposals, which are solutions to long-standing, complex problems that affect a number of different people, or if they are practical proposals, which are small, localized solutions to immediate problems that affect a relatively small group of people. So let's go through each of these. So first, we should make more shelters to decrease the amount of homeless people on the streets. So the problem here is presumably that there's too many homeless people on the streets, and the solution is we should make more shelters. Okay. So we've got a clear problem and a clear solution. At least it seems so. Because my question would be, on what streets? Right? Streets of the whole world? Streets of the United States? The streets of Texas? The streets of Houston? I don't know. Right? And telling us which streets we're talking about would really do a lot to clarify this we. Who should make more shelters? Right? I mean, is it individual people? Is it corporations? Is it the Houston government? Is it the United States federal government? And so all of those concerns would need to be specified. So I would give this one a yes at this point, provided that we more carefully describe which streets are we talking about. So we might say to decrease the amount of homeless people in Houston, right? And be more specific about who should be making these shelters. All right. So this next one. We must create a program that punishes cyberbullies to stop cyberbullying. Okay. So let's see. Our problem here is cyberbullying, all right? And the solution is a program that punishes cyberbullies. Okay, so there's a couple things with this one, right? One of the problems is that cyberbullying is usually, on social media where somebody's making fun of somebody or something like that. And the problem is that that's perfectly legal, right? That's free speech. You're allowed to say nasty things to people online. It's not nice, right? But it's legal. And so that calls into question, well, how can we punish legal behavior? Okay. Now, that brings up this question again. Who's the we? Because if the we is the Houston government, well, they probably can't punish, cyberbullies because they're not doing anything illegal. And they can't just go around public punishing people for stuff that isn't against the law, right? Further, the question is, are we talking about schools? Are schools starting this program that punishes? And if so, again, we run into this problem because most cyberbullying doesn't happen at school. It happens at home, right? And then we have the question of, do the schools have any authority to punish kids for things that they aren't doing at school? Can they punish kids for things that they do outside of school? And it seems the answer would be no, right? One group who might be able to punish cyberbullies would be the social media platforms themselves, right? So, like, for example, if Twitter, right, finds out that a particular Twitter user is targeting someone in an unfriendly way, then perhaps they could suspend that person's account or something like that. They do have the legal authority to do that, although it still brings up questions related to free speech. Now, so we need to define this we, the person whose claim this is, right? And we would probably want to rephrase the claim to look something like this. Perhaps, and it doesn't have to be this way, but I think this way would be clear. Social media platforms should enact greater punishments for people who participate in cyberbullying in order to decrease its negative effects. So we're saying cyberbullying has negative effects. We need to enact greater punishment. Social media platforms could do this. Now, let me mention that, in this particular claim, there's a lot to discuss. First off, this person would have to talk about, their paper would have to talk about, what are the negative effects of cyberbullying? Second of all, right, we'd have to talk about how do we define cyberbullying? What do we mean by that? How are social media platforms going to figure out what counts as cyberbullying so that they know who to punish? Third, the paper would have to discuss which punishments. What are the current punishments? What should the punishments be? These kinds of things. And you need to be very specific. So what's the punishment for the first offense? What's the punishment for the second offense? How are social media platforms going to keep people who get banned from just opening up new accounts under different names? That kind of thing. So this one needs some more work, right? This one, the way I have it written here would be a yes, but I just need to see from this person, send me an email and clarify some of these things for me. Who should increase metal detectors in public places to solve gun control, right? Well, gun control isn't the problem here. What is? We don't want to solve gun control. We want to reduce gun violence. Okay. Then we would need to be specific about who this we is. The city of Houston, Houston Public Schools. I presume it's the city of Houston because we're talking about public places. And this paper would need to talk about, well, which public places? Specifically, how many metal detectors? Who's going to monitor them? How are we going to pay for them? what evidence is there that shows that gun violence goes down when we add metal detectors? And you can find out that through your research. Okay, so this one gets a yes, but this "we" needs to be more specific. Okay. The government should pass laws for protecting endangered wildlife. All right, I presume we're talking about the U.S. government here. Should pass. We already have laws protecting endangered wildlife, right? So this really needs to be stricter laws. Okay, the U.S. government should pass stricter laws for protecting endangered wildlife. And stricter laws usually means laws with greater penalties or punishments. And so this person is going to need to, first of all, research, what are the current laws that protect endangered wildlife? What are the current punishments? And then this paper would need to detail what should the law say? What should the punishments be? And I would search, if I were this person, is there evidence that shows that stricter laws actually do a better job of protecting endangered wildlife? So with this one change, right, this claim is approved. All right, the Electoral College is out of date and needs revision or needs to be abolished completely to ensure a fair election process. Okay, so we have an implied problem here. Unfair elections, right? And it's debatable, right, that the Electoral College is unfair, right? In other words, the states with the fewest people in them, well, those people still have to abide by federal law, right? And life is much different in New York and California and Florida and, Washington and Oregon, right, than it is in Kansas and Nebraska and North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming and Idaho and everywhere else. And so what the Electoral College does is try to ensure that the most populous places, New York, California, don't get to just pick the president on their own, and then the entire huge rest of the country has to live by policies that are really designed by people in the urban centers who live in a different way than other people do, right? So I guess what I'm saying here is I'm not so sure that the Electoral College is out of date, but it's okay if this person thinks so. My suggestion here is you need to decide this, right? Which is it, right? Does it need to be revised or does it need to be abolished? Okay. Now, ordinarily, I would say, go with the stronger claim. It needs to be abolished to ensure a fair election process. But it's important that this person understands that if you go with this claim, it won't be enough to just say, oh, here's why it needs to be abolished, right? The actual part of the proposal would be explaining how will the electoral process work once we've abolished the Electoral College. In other words, the proposal will be a fair system of electing a president once the Electoral College is gone. If that person is fine making that new system and describing that new system the center of the essay, then yes, this is approved. So if that isn't cool, then that person needs to email me. How can we prevent worldwide animal cruelty? As we've talked about in class a few times, this isn't a claim, right? It's a question. And I don't know. This person needs to tell me, how can we prevent worldwide cruelty? What we need to say is the U.S. government, and I mean, there's a question too here. Is there any way we can prevent worldwide animal cruelty? You might want to narrow this down, right? How could we prevent animal cruelty in America? Or how could we reduce animal cruelty in Asia or somewhere like that, right? So you'll need to be more specific. What specifically do we need to do to reduce this problem or address this problem, and where? So I need another email from this person, and the sooner you guys are able to do that, the better. Okay. So I hope this helps everybody. If you haven't emailed me your claim yet, please do it. Have a good weekend.